So Attorney Kelvin Lester Lee, a lawyer and a graduate of the Ateneo de Manila School of Law. I think you do have some co-alumni also here attending. Was appointed SEC Commissioner on January 25, 2019. As SEC Commissioner, he is the chairman of the Task Force on Ease of Doing Business, protecting minority investors, and the co-chairperson of the SEC Committee to operationalize the revised Corporation Code provisions. Prior to joining the Commission, he was an Assistant Secretary in the Office of the Executive Secretary at the Office of the President, where he also sat in the board of the Subic Bay Metropolitan Authority. Before entering government, Attorney Lee practiced law in Davao and in Manila. He began his career as an associate lawyer of the Sigyon Reyna, Montecillo, and Ongsiaco Law Office. He was also an opinion and legal columnist of the Sunstar Davao newspaper. Currently, Attorney Lee writes a business law column for the Manila Times. So may I invite Attorney, or Commissioner rather, Kelvin Lester Lee to share us his thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you for the very kind introduction, Ma'am Boots. On the point of the title, I've never liked the title Commissioner. I found it too long. So people are perfectly fine to call me Kelvin. I really don't mind. On that point, oh sorry, can I ask that the PowerPoint be there was a PowerPoint, Ma'am Anne, I believe.
Anna, please.
Anna, sorry, Anna, can I have it put on screen? In any case, before I begin, I just wanted to say I was very impressed with the way you handled your board meeting just now. In particular, it seemed like it's a very formal, very well done. I've sat in multiple GOCCs, different boards, and so far this is one of the better setups that I've seen. So I'm actually very impressed. So kudos to the SharePHIL on that point. There. If you don't mind, I'll just start. I have a prepared speech, but I might, in light of the fact that most of the people who are in front of me now are very familiar with most of the things I'm going to be talking about, I might skip a lot now. So I apologize. The topic as given to me was investor education protection, but I'm sure most of you are more than aware of this. But so I'll focus on the updates portion at the latter half of the discussion, if that's okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the Shareholders Association of the Philippines, SharePHIL, to Madame Evelyn Singson, the SharePHIL chairperson, to Sir Alfredo Parunga, our SharePHIL president, to Sir Attorney Francis Lim, our colleague in so many of these corporate initiatives right now, to Ma'am Boots, to our former chair, Febarin, I'm informed is also here, to my former professor, always forever my dean in Ateneo Law, Dean CLV, good afternoon, sir. And to Attorney Mata Perez, who is my fellow columnist in the Manila Times. Ladies and gentlemen, pleasant good afternoon to all of you. So on behalf of the Securities and Exchange Commission, allow me to extend my heartfelt greetings to the entire SharePHIL. It's an honor and privilege for me to be here to talk about the initiatives of the SEC when it comes to investor education and protection, which frankly, I'm sure most of you are very well aware of anyway, but let me just go through this. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide. There we go. So these are the topics. We can probably gloss through the first one, the SEC mandate, mission, and vision, because I'm sure you're aware of that. Then we have our enforcement. Then we have our enabling regulatory environment, and then the education and advocacy. So I'll focus on the latter three later on. Next slide, please. So the SEC's mandate, mission, and vision. Sorry, next slide there. Yeah, there. So who we are, I think you're aware that we are the Securities and Exchange Commission. We're the national government regulatory agency charged with supervision of the corporate sector. But what has made our SEC unique is that we are also your company registrar. Other SECs throughout the world usually focus only on market regulation on the capital market. We are unique in the sense that we have both the securities regulator, the market regulator. We're also the company registrar, meaning we're the ones who register companies. So we're usually the first point of business, first point of contact for anyone who wants to do business in the Philippines. And this is precisely why we have partnered with ARTA. I'm sure you're aware, you're familiar with ARTA, the Anti-Red Tape Authority. ARTA's mandate includes fast-tracking government processes and removing red tape, So one of the things that we have been working on and which we will launch, I think you'll be excited to hear, by around February, would be the central business portal. We're going to relaunch that in light of the times now, the COVID situation. It's going to essentially be an online registry for almost everything. So we're looking at registration in a faster method, hopefully with a new interim company registration system. Anyway, next slide, please. So the mission of the SEC. So the mission that we're looking at is that we're going to be the gateway to doing business in the Philippines, as I mentioned earlier. And then provide a competitive and secure environment for easy company registration, efficient capital formation, and broad investor participation. So next slide, please. Let me talk about the supervision. The Supervision 2025 is our vision for the next few years. Now, why 2025? Because the term of our current chairperson, a very good man, Chairman Emil Aquino, I'm sure most of you know him already. Very, very aggressive when it comes to changes, initiatives, and enforcement. His term runs out around 2025. So anyway, our vision is that by 2025, the SEC, with its driven, highly trained, and customer-centric team of professionals equipped with innovative technology and automated registration data management systems, is the premier investor champion and catalyst of a broad and informed investor-based capital market and business sector considered among the best in the Southeast Asian region. I know it's a long sentence, but we had to try to encapsulate everything we wanted to do during the of our chair. Now, why only Southeast Asian region? Originally, we wanted to say in Asia, but we were worried that because of the shorter timeline, because we only had until 2025, we might not be able to meet this vision. So we just limited ourselves to Southeast Asia. Our competitors there are still challenging, considering it's Singapore and Malaysia, and countries like that. But we'll try our best. Hopefully, we can meet this. And we are in the middle of transitioning to many things when it comes to our digital initiatives, even before COVID. So we're being forced to fast track a little bit as well. No? Anyway, next slide, please. Sorry, next. There. So to secure the capital market and business, this is, I guess, the meat of the discussion today. And we divide our discussion to the three topics on enforcement, enabling the regulatory environment, and education and advocacy. Now, enforcement, next slide, please. As you know, enforcement is a particular passion of ours at the SEC now, especially for our chair. Our chair comes from an enforcement background. So he strongly believes that he wants to protect the investing public by enforcement actions against investment scams and the likes. Sorry, next slide, please. I'd just like to show you in our website, which is, by the way, and I'm sure most of you are aware, www.sec.gov.ph. We already have a list over there to help alert the investing public as to the different investment scams, as to the different, how to say it politely, alanganin companies or businesses that are operating out there. We have a full list of advisories and cease and desist. CDO stands for cease and desist orders. I actually recommend, before anyone invests, they try and look at our website first, check out the advisories so that they'll know whether or not that company is legit or not, alanganin or not. Prime example, without going too much specifics, would be Forsage. I think some of you have heard about that. Forsage is the latest cryptocurrency thing based in Eastern Europe. It's something that everyone keeps claiming that it's legitimate, it's normal, and that people earn so much money from it, but it's actually pretty much just a Ponzi scheme. And we've issued cease and desist orders, and I think only yesterday we approved the final cease and desist order for that. Anyway, so that's our website in relation to that. Next slide, please. Now, when it comes to enforcement, what's the basis for our jurisdiction when it comes to enforcement against these investment scams? Well, it boils down to the definition of an investment contract. Under the Securities Regulation Code, which I'm sure my dean, CLV, and Attorney Francis Lim is very familiar with, it mentions that investment contracts are included in the term security. So an investment contract, as defined here, is by the Power Homes case, is that it is a contract, transaction, or scheme whereby a person invests money in a common enterprise and is led to expect profit from the efforts of others. So it's a very expansive term. So if a scheme offering, which we're in the offering sale of securities in the form of investment contracts to the public and the investors, they don't have to exert any effort other than investing or putting the money there in that entity in order to generate income, that scheme is already considered a form of investment contract and thus is a form of security falling under our jurisdiction. by law, under the Securities Regulation Code, anytime you are doing an investment contract and you're a form of security, you have to file a registration statement with us. You have to get the secondary license and approval from the SEC. So that's the thing, that's the basis for our reasoning why, and this has been upheld by the Supreme Court, by the way, why we have jurisdiction when it comes to investment scams, investment schemes, and things of the like. Because technically, if it's considered an investment contract, then it's deemed a form of security, which would be under our jurisdiction. Okay, so in fact, any investment scheme that sells securities, or what would be considered securities, without a secondary license from the SEC would inevitably be considered an investment scam. And that's our basis for our mandate when it comes to this. Next slide, please. Let me talk about the Howie Test, and let's try to apply it so just you're aware. Although I'm sure, once again, especially to the lawyers out there, you're very aware of this. And if you don't mind, the Howie Test is a Supreme Court case all the way from the US, which we apply here. Now, it has been carried over by some of our Supreme Court cases as well. So that's what we apply when it comes to investment contracts. So those are the four elements: is that there's an investment of money in a common enterprise, there's an expectation of profit, and primarily from the efforts of others, as I mentioned earlier. Now, the best example of this, and this comes from recent experience on my end, I'm from Davao, no? And in Davao, in Mindanao, there was something called Kappa, which was very, very popular at the time last year. It was so popular that I used to fly home every weekend. When we issued out cease and desist orders and advisories against Kappa, my own mother actually advised me not to go home during the weekends because they knew that I was one of those who approved and was enforcing cease and desist orders against them. So even my own mom from Davao was suggesting I don't go home because I might be at risk. I was from Malacanang. I was not given security when I was in Malacanang. When I got here and I dealt with this whole Kappa thing, I was actually given separate security. So it gives you an idea how bad it was last year. Anyway, when it comes to Kappa, investment of money. In Kappa scheme, the money involved for Kappa was that there would be a donation, a minimum donation worth usually at least 10,000 pesos. So there's one, investment of money. Two, it should be in a common enterprise. The common enterprise was their so-called Kappa Community Ministry International, which, by the way, was previously registered as a religious corporation. Third, there's an expectation of profit. What was their expectation of profit? They beat any other form of security, actually, because the donor who gave the initial 10,000 pesos donation would get a blessing, or could expect a blessing worth 30% of the amount they donated every month for life. So obviously that's ridiculous. 30%, right? In 3 months, 3.5, you would get your money back already. And it's supposed to be for life. So there's something wrong right there, too good to be true. And oh yeah, and primarily from the efforts of others, that's element number 4. So that person, the investor, the donor, doesn't even have to do anything other than invest and wait for the day of the monthly payout. So clearly, all the elements of an investment contract were present in Kappa, and it was clearly an investment scheme falling under our jurisdiction, but they never filed a registration statement. Now, as you've seen already in the news, Kappa has proven itself to be not just an investment scheme, but an investment scam. It had no license from us to solicit investments. It never filed a registration with us. And in fact, they even claimed that we had no jurisdiction. The SEC had no jurisdiction since they're a religious corporation. Being a religious corporation, because of religious freedom, we supposedly couldn't touch any of their activities. Now, you would think that's a ridiculous argument, but sadly, there was actually a court in Mindanao that issued a PRO against us, citing that very reason. So we actually complained about that particular court to the higher court, and it was overturned, no, thankfully. Otherwise, it would have been a ridiculous doctrine right there. But anyway, so that's what we do in the SEC. We base it on the Howie Test, and that's how our enforcement in investor protection department, our investigators, are able to determine whether or not something is considered an investment scheme or investment scam, for that matter, and falling under our jurisdiction. Now, another form, and a very popular form of investor issue, would be the Ponzi scheme. Next slide, please. It's we face this almost every day, and in fact, most of the investment scams focus or fall under this category. This was named after Charles Ponzi, who duped thousands of New England residents into investing in a postage stamp speculation way back in 1920s. It must be fun being named, having a scheme named after you. So anyway, it's an investment fraud. Ponzi scheme is investment fraud that involves the payment of purported returns to existing investors from funds contributed by new investors. So obviously, once there are the pool of new investors dry up, you can't keep the Ponzi scheme going. So Ponzi scheme organizers often have to keep soliciting new investments by promising to invest funds in opportunities claimed to generate high returns with little no risk, but that's never really the case, right? Next slide, please. Now, Ponzi schemes have little to no legitimate earnings, and they usually require a consistent flow of money from new investors, as I mentioned. So when it becomes difficult to recruit new members, it collapses. Our position as the SEC is that we don't want to wait for Ponzi schemes to get too big and then collapse before we act. We try to act now before they collapse. Kumbaga, if we know it's a Ponzi scheme, we have more than enough evidence to show that it's a Ponzi scheme, similar to Kappa and the like. We already hit them. We already inform the public. We already do advisories or cease and desist orders. Why? Because we have seen through history what happens if a Ponzi scheme gets too big. One example, and I invite you to look this up, is Albania. Albania as a country, an Eastern European country, by the way, which after it got out from USSR at the time, it got embroiled in so many Ponzi schemes that the Ponzi schemes were so bad that the money held within Ponzi schemes almost equaled half of the GDP at the time. It shows you how big the whole country nearly collapsed when these things started defaulting. We don't want to go there. We don't want to be there. Zimbabwe is also a country that's getting embroiled in a similar situation. So many Ponzi schemes that it's almost on the brink of collapse. Like I said, we don't want to go there. We want to stop it before we get there. So, and that's why, by the way, we're so aggressive when it comes to Ponzi scheme, especially now during the time of COVID. Because as I'll show you later, there have been so many medyo alanganin na investment scams already also coming into play because it's time of COVID. Next slide, please. Sorry. So what are some red flags when it comes to Ponzi schemes? Well, this is fairly basic. The high investment returns with little or no risk, overly consistent high returns. Then it's unregistered, meaning clearly it's not registered with us. Usually what happens pala there is they always claim that they're registered with the SEC, but only as a corporation, right? Or they're registered with the DTI as a single proprietorship, but they can never show any paperwork to show to the public that they are allowed to solicit investments. So that's a completely separate requirement. So that's something to look at. Unlicensed sellers, secretive and or complex strategies. My favorite talaga, it's almost ridiculous, is that so many of them keep saying that, no, you don't understand Bitcoin. No, we don't have to go to you. We're not regulated by you because we're a cryptocurrency. What they don't realize is that within the Philippine jurisdiction, it's been agreed with the BSP, cryptocurrencies, digital asset offerings are also considered under the BSP and ourselves, because cryptocurrencies or digital assets are also considered securities under the definition and securities regulation code. So at the end of the day, these people saying, no, we don't have to register with you, they don't realize that they have to come to us anyway. They still have to get registered with the SEC actually. So mali talaga sila. I hear issues with paperwork and obviously difficulty receiving payments once the scheme gets too far ahead. Next slide, please. How to avoid Ponzi schemes. So siguro you have to ask questions. Is the seller licensed? Is the investment registered? How do the risk compare with the potential rewards? Do I understand it? And where can I turn to for help? And our number one answer to that question is, where can I turn to for help? You should come to us. You look for us at the SEC. Now, my personal take on this is that if it's too good to be true, it usually is too good to be true. No, there's something wrong right there. So kung the results, for example, the proposal is 30% revenue for life for a one-time donation, there's something wrong talaga. And those are the things you should look out for. Next slide, please. Now, as I said, we have been very aggressive when it comes to enforcement actions, especially during the time of COVID, so many online scams coming up. So with the recent COVID-19 pandemic, we have not been idle. We've actually been issuing multiple advisories. We've issued over 100 advisories already. And we've issued as well, this isn't 8, no, it's 9 cease and desist orders, sorry. Hindi pala na updated. We approved one just yesterday at the NBank yesterday against Forsage. So that's actually 9 cease and desist orders already. So we've been aggressive. We've been keeping track. Our investigators, despite the difficulties, as you can see from the situation now, which they can't really go out much, they are still very active. They still keep track and they still keep working. So just because there's the pandemic, just because there's GCQ, ECQ, whatever, doesn't mean that we have been sleeping on the job. We've been trying as much as possible to keep our investing public safe. Next slide, please. Now, when it comes to enabling regulatory environment, the latter half of my topic now, and I'm sure this is something that the securities lawyers out there have noticed. We've issued some requirements and some new, how do we say this? Some new, easier notices to make things a little easier in light of, for our publicly listed corporations and our other regulators in light of the COVID pandemic. MSRD, by the way, it stands for Market Securities Regulation Department. That's one of our departments that focuses on publicly listed corporations, among others. And I think for some of you, you transact with them a lot. No? So the MSRD, upon approval by the NBank, because usually have to have it approved by us, we issued a notice requiring publicly listed corporations to disclose the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in mid-March. Why? Because as you're aware, we follow a full transparency, a full disclosure regulatory regime at the SEC. What does that mean? That means that as much as possible, we want everyone to be able to make an informed decision because all the information is available. So the point of that particular notice was to have our publicly listed corporations inform everyone through their submissions what has been the impact of COVID-19 to that particular publicly listed corporation so that the investor can make an informed decision. And then because of the fact that it was so difficult making submissions around that time, we also issued a notice upon approval by the NBank allowing listed firms to file their disclosures through EDGE. So that's the PSE EDGE. No? So when you submit to the PSE through your EDGE, PSE EDGE system, it was deemed already as a submission to the SEC. And then we would just internally coordinate with PSE in relation to those submissions. Now, next slide, please. Now, another thing that we tried to do and we tried to make sure it pushed through was the resumption of operations. You will recall that around March 17, the initial announcement of ECQ, Enhanced Community Quarantine, the capital markets all shut down because they were complying with the orders of the IATF at the time. When this happened, it had a very negative impact because we were the only capital market, we were the only, exchange to shut down, aside from Sri Lanka, we closed down and Sri Lanka also closed down. So it was not one of our better moments. So it took some lobbying and it took some discussion with our superiors, the Secretary of Finance, the Secretary of Health. I personally texted and called the Secretary of Health and the Secretary of Justice at the time to help push that, they allow the capital markets to reopen. I also, of course, called my former office mates in my old office. We imparted how important it was that the capital markets reopen. And thankfully, they agreed with us. So the capital markets reopened almost instantly the next day. PDS, the Philippine Dealing System Group, reopened immediately on March 18 upon approval by the IATF. The Philippine Stock Exchange, because of some logistics with the brokers, reopened, I believe, on March, let me check my notes, March 19, yeah, so 2 days after. So that has been part of some of the things that have been keeping us busy at the SEC. Now, next slide, please. We also implemented a 3-stage circuit breaker. The reason we did this was because we noticed that at the time, if you recall in March, everything was so fluid, we weren't sure what was happening. Medyo malaki yung bagsak ng market. I'm sure everyone felt that, especially for those who put their savings and who were investors in mutual funds and things like that. So we were constrained upon coordination with the PSC to implement a new form of circuit breaker. What is a circuit breaker? It's a trading halt or suspension in a stock market when the prescribed threshold is reached. This is it's usually benchmarked against the main index of the stock market, and it's usually used to halt the panic, because sometimes when emotions get in the way in something like this, and then it'll just keep crashing really, really quickly. So the 15-minute under our current rules now, which we approved just around, I think, April, if I recall correctly, we allowed now for a 15-minute halt when the PSE drops 10% as pegged against the main index. Then we allowed a 30-minute halt when the PSEI drops 16%, and then a 60-minute halt when the PSEI drops 20%. So once again, this is to give everyone breathing room, everyone time to think, everyone time to breathe muna when it comes to a crashing market. Next slide, please. We also revised the static threshold. So trading halt when the share price drops 30%, and then a full trading halt when the share price rises above 50%. So once again, back to the logic that this is intended to give everyone time to breathe, to not allow panic to set in among our investors. So there. Next slide, please. Some of the other regulatory relief measures that we have implemented. We adjusted our deadlines for annual reports and annual financial statements, our GIS and other reportorial requirements. Currently, our deadline, if I recall correctly, is around, for GIS hard copies, if I recall correctly, is now September 30, 2020. Please check na lang online for the specific deadline that applies to you. We are trying to adjust, just so you're aware pala, no? Some people complain to me, why do we keep moving our hard deadlines, deadlines now for hard copies? Well, the main reason we kept moving the deadline is to give everyone time to adjust, to give everyone breathing room to file, to make these filings. Why? Well, we know naman it's hard to submit some of these things, and we actually already allow, as we can see in our next in this side plan, no, that we already allow electronic submissions, even if it's not notarized and everything, as an initial submission. But because we are the main repository of all these financial statements, even the BIR comes to us to get our data, by the way. No? The BIR, it seems, doesn't maintain the audited financial statements of most companies. We are mandated by law to hold on to and be the repository of all this data. We are constrained talaga that we have to have the hard copies pa currently. We're trying to work out a system where you don't even have to submit the hard copies anymore. Hopefully we can roll that out next year. But currently, as an interim measure, we still need the hard copies, and I ask for your patience when it comes to that. And next, now we have the electronic courier, other alternate modes of filing, the SEC Express, the SEND system. So the point of that is to minimize you coming in. We implemented that through SEC Memorandum Circular number 10, series of 2020. We also have now the new interim online registration system for one-person corporations and corporations with 2 to 4 incorporators. Now, the link is there of the interim online registration system. And I'd just like to say, I'm very proud of that system because that is homegrown. So we know that we have the CRS, which has been a bit of a problem, and we're trying to fix it. But that has, because the CRS at the time, the company registration system, at the time we implemented it, there was still no revised corporation code. The interim online registration system is in response to the need to have a revised corporation code centric registration system. And like I said, I'm very proud of the fact that it was our own technicians internally, our own developers internally who developed this with help from the DICT. So I invite you to check it out. I'm so happy and so proud of that. And in fact, we were so happy with this interim online registration system. We rarely get any complaints about this one, by the way. We are now trying to roll it out, not just for one-person corporations. We're also going to do it for 5-person and up. We're trying to alleviate the stress involved with the current company registration system. So hopefully, I'm looking forward to that as well. We publish online the different email addresses and the different ways of coordinating, communicating with us at the SEC. We're trying, as I said, to discourage people from coming into the SEC, if possible, physically, I mean, to the SEC. If possible, I suggest you call or email before you come to see our people when you come to incorporate. Next slide, please. So I'll talk very quickly on measures on investor protection now. So we had transparency and disclosure requirements. So I think I mentioned that not before, so no need to really touch on that. Remote communication. I'm actually very happy to see that earlier you were amending your articles and your bylaws to also do remote communication. So I'm sure you're aware of that. That whatever provisions or changes you made, amendments you made, seemed to me to be in compliance with SEC Memorandum Circular number 6, no, which you issued in March 12, around the time of this COVID pandemic. Now. So it allows you, corporations, to hold meetings via remote communication and to approve provisions in the bylaws or adapt your internal procedures for the conduct of remote meetings. So I'm very happy to see you're actually implementing it. We were also looking forward to having advisory cease and desist orders and continued investor education program campaign, which I'll mention further a little later on. No? Next slide, please. Here, issuances and market listings amid the pandemic. I'm very happy to say that despite the fact that there is COVID, there have been very many bonds. There's even been an IPO that was listed and issued even during COVID. So Merrimart Grocery, RCBC issued bonds, BPI, Ayala also, by the way, issued the RIT. If you've seen the news, now Aboitiz issued bonds as well. I attended that launching. Then I also attended the AGMA fund. That's a new mutual fund. So I'm very proud of the fact that these entities continue to incorporate, continue to issue out market listings even during the pandemic. SM Investment Corporation, that was a new bond. We just approved that yesterday. So, kumbaga tuloy-tuloy, no? I'm happy to say that I'm happy to relate to everyone that the market continues. Our capital market, our investment programs within the country continue. It seems that everyone is, and not everyone, but a lot of people are very optimistic when it comes to the Philippines and our capital markets. Next slide, please. Yes, allow me to discuss with you the very quickly lang, because this is very complicated actually. The corporate debt vehicle. This is supposed to be an option separate from the SPV, but it's supposed to operate similar to that, the special purpose vehicle. The point is to allow a company to invest in portfolios of corporate debt papers of large corporations and medium-sized enterprises. And the goal is to be ready when it comes time for some of the bigger companies to unload, no, or to allow investments in some of these more alanganin na debt papers that you might have. So this is new, by the way. We just issued the rules, I think, 2 weeks ago, and we're still going to roll out a webinar in relation to this to try and drum up support for this. I am aware of currently 2 entities that plan to create this. So it's a kind of special mutual fund in a manner of speaking. Now, originally, we were going to call it the CDF, the Corporate Debt Fund, but we had some pushback because turns out there was a Supreme Court case in relation to CDF, the Countryside Development Fund, I think, if I recall correctly, which is the pork barrel thing. So we didn't want to go into that, so we stuck with this term na lang instead, the corporate debt vehicle. So just so you're aware, we issued that through SEC Memorandum Circular number 23, series of 2020. Only recently, mga August lang. No? So next slide, please. So what is it? Very quickly, these are some of the things that is involved when it comes to corporate debt vehicle. It's a closed-end investment fund. So it's supposed to be offered to any number of qualified buyers and or non-qualified buyers, but not exceeding 19 persons in the Philippines during any 12-month period, with the very, very specific objective on investing in the corporate debts of large corporations and medium-sized enterprises. And as I mentioned, there are around 2 entities already that have been speaking to us that intends to incorporate a CVV. So hopefully we can roll them out within the year. Next slide. Some of the product features of the CDV, I won't really go through it because frankly, if you want to discuss the CDV, one of my directors would be much better situated to explain it. We do intend to roll out a webinar later this year on this to help drum up knowledge and interest on this. I invite you to go check that out. In case, however, you want to know more about the CDV now, even beyond the webinar, I can have my staff email you separately. We have a quick briefer or FAQ about the CDV. So if you're interested, let me know or tell me through my staff or through my email address, and I'll have someone send you the initial FAQ on that. So I'm very excited about this. Actually, I'm looking forward to more interest in this later on. Now, in order to help the economy and then to deal with medyo alanganin corporate debts that will be coming up pretty soon, I think. Hopefully not, but it'll probably come up. So next slide. We're going to talk about education and advocacy. So next slide, please. Now, we're in line with the need to do investor protection, investor education. We're boosting our advocacy now to improve ease of doing business and develop an inclusive capital market through webinars. So I think a few weeks ago, and I'm very happy that I think some of the people who are here now also attended or at least watched some of our webinars in relation to that. We launched the Securing the Philippine Capital Market and Business Sector webinar, I think just about a month ago lang no? I was tasked to speak on the revised corporation code at the time. And then our commissioners were all there. So it was one of those big launches. And last week we had our recent one, the one for MSMEs. Next week, we're going to do, I think, one held by our Office of General Accountant for the accountants out there. I invite you to attend that webinar next Wednesday. It's going to be on Facebook din naman po, no? Then later on, we have one for capital markets, how to invest in the stock market. We would also have later on corporate governance, on lending companies, financing companies. So we intend to roll this out very consistently to help show the general public, of course, our advocacies and the direction that we're going. So next slide, please. Here. So this is our timeline pala. It's here pala. Sorry. No. This mentions all the different webinars that we plan to roll out this year. Please feel free to join in. I would be happy to see you guys there. I'll probably be there virtually as well, giving either the opening or closing remark. I think I'm going to be lecturing in some of them as well. So once again, I invite you. You can see this, or you can sign up for us on our website, www.sec.gov.ph. Next slide, please. I'm about done. Here, just wanted to let you know as well that the president also issued a proclamation number 846 last year, November 15 last year, which marked the second week of November as our Investor Protection Week. So around that time, around November, we're going to roll out a separate set of webinars in relation to Investor Protection Week. So in November 9, we're going to have a launch. Then November 11, different multiple webinars. Corporate governance forum, since I supervise the corporate governance and finance department, I'll probably be there as well. So I hope to see some of you there if you're available. We'll try to make the topics interesting, of course. And then anyway, again, I advise you to check out our website, www.sec.gov.ph, when it comes to these things. And I think that's it. No, that's our initiatives. That's our updates when it comes to investor education protection. Next slide, please. I hope you were able to pick up something. Like I said, a lot of these things, most of you already know it, and most of it's already on the website. I apologize. I should have gone for a different topic pala that might have been more relevant to you, but hopefully you were able to pick up something. In any case, please allow me to give you a personal plea lang, to relay my personal plea, because what happens now almost every day is I get multiple phone calls, texts, or emails from people complaining about our people downstairs, complaining that there are so many delays now when it comes to transactions. I just wanted to let you know that we're trying our best. No, we are still incorporating. We're still operating within the SEC. And in fact, the number of transactions that we're getting is very close, not yet, but very close to pre-COVID times. Kumbaga, we're getting hundreds, sometimes thousands of transactions a day already pa rin, even during COVID. So the volume is there, but our people are less. Take note that we are required to do skeleton work now. So it has been a little difficult. So I understand that medyo nakabacklog na rin. Siguro my plea, my very personal plea is, please be patient with us. We're trying our best. Our people are trying our best. Everyone is at risk naman din now. We're trying also to alleviate the risk for everyone. But the fact that our people have to work so hard to catch up with the backlog implies to me that people are still very optimistic about our economy. They're still very optimistic about our markets. They're very optimistic about our businesses here. So many people want to incorporate. So many people want to do business, even though medyo we have issues na because of COVID. So if there's one thing I hope you take away from this talk now is that there is optimism in the market. There is optimism in the business sector. Mukhang so many people still see opportunities despite everything. So I hope you take that to heart, and I hope that also you will also join me in that optimism, no, from what I see. So with that, thank you, SharePHIL. Oh yeah, the chairman's favorite tagline. He always likes me to say this at the end of all my speeches. So allow me to say it lang, no. We at the SEC hope to make it easy at SEC. So I look forward to getting your feedback. Please feel free to email me pala at the email address ocili@sec.gov.ph. And with that, I'm okay. Thank you, Ma'am Boots. I hope that's sufficient. I'll mute myself.
Kelvin, do you have time for a few questions?
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, you spoke about, a plea for understanding and all that, but I do have a question from the chat box which asks, what is your aspirational turnaround time for incorporation? Especially for one-man corporations which are thriving now with a lot of individuals setting up medium and small enterprises.
To be very frank, Ma'am Boots, our typical turnaround time dapat pre-COVID is roughly 3 days. No, siguro 70 to 80% of our transactions kaya within 3 days. Right now, I want to say 3 days kasi kung OPC, medyo kaya yan, but sometimes we're hit by operational concerns. For instance, there was a whole bunch of papers we were supposed to issue one day, and then tama-tama may natamaan ng COVID, so we were forced to shut down yung front office namin for a few days. So that hit the 3-day turnaround time agad, no? But as a general rule, siguro mga 3 days to a week, presuming nothing goes wrong, meaning no issues as to delivery of documents, no issues as to signature, no one gets hit with anything. Medyo kaya naman, especially if it's an OPC, if it's a one-person corporation. So,
Okay. Are you raising your hand, Mon? Oh, okay. Does anyone have a question? Otherwise, I will ask a question myself.
yes, sir.
Hello.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that Francis wanted to ask?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Com. No? I'm glad that, in fact, it has been demonstrated that the SEC has been proactive, no? Very, very proactive even during this COVID times. No? My question has something to do with Bayanihan 2. Okay? Under Bayanihan 2, there is a provision which authorizes the president to issue directive, to sort of ask government agencies to approve new and pending applications within a non-extendable period of 7 days. I think there's a provision, a very specific provision. But it says that it merely authorizes the president to issue such directive addressed to the government agencies. No? Since the SEC has been very proactive, I was wondering if the SEC can do it on its own, even without that directive from the president. Because, you know, it takes, because the president has so many concerns, and it may take him quite a while to issue that directive. And considering that it will be nationwide, I don't know if this is a good idea, if SEC can do it on its own in a non-extendable 7-day period. For new and pending applications. That will help a lot, not only in terms for OPC, but for other transactions pending with the, you know. And if you read that together with the Ease of Doing Business Act, if the government agency fails to act within that day, the application is deemed approved. That would be a very good initiative. If I may just suggest, for the SEC to do, no? It will show. It will really show how proactive, no, the SEC is. No? Even without, if it can do that, even without waiting for the directive from the President of the Philippines. Just put.
Sure. If I may. Oh, yeah, sure. If I may, we actually were considering something similar. Not in those words, no, not in the words of the Bayanihan. We were actually considering something similar na parang internal guidelines na turnaround time, dapat ganito.
Yeah.
No, separate from the ARTA requirements, separate from the Bayanihan Act requirements, no, yung kumbaga sa citizen charter parang may internal guidelines. But the problem was we were hesitant kasi to parang put a hard limit on our people kasi the vast majority kaya eh. But for instance, there have been some applications, some amendments, for instance, na talagang umaabot pa sa level ng commissioner, level ng chairman, na sobrang touchy kasi, na maraming issues talaga that require a hard second look on our end. So it is transactions like that makes me hesitate, that makes us hesitate to put this in writing, eh, na talagang formal issuance, no? But rest assured naman, sir, we are moving in that direction. We're trying to talagang implement as quickly as possible, turnaround time as quickly as possible naman. Kasi we don't really want these things to be pending. Marami kasi talaga, and we don't want to be the hadlang din for these businesses to operate, no? So
because,
sure.
Yeah, because
sure. Sorry, go ahead.
The capital market transactions have been quite active even in the midst of pandemic, di ba?
Yes.
There are IPOs, A-REIT was one, then you're about the CDB, and I understand that they're takers, no? And I think there's some momentum, eh? So
yes, correct. And there's a few more IPOs coming out this year, huh? There's one more that I'm sure you've all heard about, yung isang telecom company, very aggressive.
Converge. I'm a director there. I'm a director there.
Talaga? I didn't know. Oh, okay. No wonder.
So,
I didn't name it.
No, Governor,
for the record, hindi ako nagsabi.
I are directors there. Governor Saite Tanco and I are directors there.
Okay.
So, yeah, there are things like this, though, will help the country recover, no, from the economic fiasco that has been brought about by the pandemic. No? If all government agencies are doing what you have been doing, I know SMIC, for example, has taken quite a short period to do, no, to approve, no. So mga ganun, no? It's very encouraging to know. And as I think I texted you, Com, that
yes.
yung
IPO.
IPO tax, napakaganda
IPO
po.
tax. Sir, we're actually very happy about that. Just so you're aware, no? Siguro, I'm not breaking naman siguro any confidentiality rules on this. I had a meeting this morning. We had a meeting this morning coming in the chair with the World Bank, and they were asking for updates about some initiatives on our end. And that was one of the things we talaga very purposely brought up in relation to the tax regime. No, that the Bayanihan Act 2 remove the IPO tax. So the World Bank people were very happy naman to hear that, because they've been auditing us, kasi no, I'm sure you're aware the World Bank has been auditing us among a number of our issues. So and they were very happy to hear about that initiative of yours.
That's good for the members of SharePHIL, because the cost will be passed on to the investors.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. So yeah.
Unless I have a question here about okay, actually there was a related question related to technology. Does the SEC have a specific guidelines on the conduct of stockholders meetings and other remote meetings in terms of the platform or the equipment that should be used?
No, naman. We leave that up to you. Ang SEC Memorandum Circular number 6 specifically leaves it up to you in relation to the internal procedures and things like that. We don't want to impose a particular We don't want to impose a particular platform, no? Because you know it might look like we prefer one particular one over the other. So we leave it up to you. WebEx ba, Zoom ba, or whatever platform you want to use. No, so no worries as to that. Ma'am, I turned on the chat. I noticed, Attorney Kapunan, I apologize. Simple incorporation taking so long seems that I will admit. Sorry, to read na lang to the comment of Attorney Kapunan po. Simple incorporation taking so long seems the SEC has a difficult time transitioning from manual to digital comment. Please, yes, I admit that. I agree. It has been difficult. No, the transition has been very hard for us, especially considering that due to the volume of people coming in, the volume of transaction has been difficult. Once again, I reiterate my plea, please be patient with us. We're trying our best. We are coming out with new, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have a new interim online registration system coming out around November nga po, no, in collaboration with ARTA. So we have things like that, and we're actually doing so many shortcuts na talaga, so many expediting measures just to try and keep things moving as quickly as we can. But we have so many limitations, and a lot of the requirements din I'm sure you're aware of yung mga core requirements, things like that have been a bit of a hadlang, no? Especially when I wanted to procure a number of new IT systems. So I apologize for that, ma'am. I hope you understand. We're trying our best. No, it's not that we're trying to make things difficult. We don't want it to be difficult. We want these things to move along din naman kasi, because I do see the optimism in the market. In the economy. I do see the people who are interested in continuing to do business. So once again, my suggestion is, my plea, my personal plea, please be patient with us. We're trying our best. If there's a particular transaction that is a problem that you wish to complain to me about, please feel free to email me po. My email address is there, and then I'll have someone take a look kung talagang may problema po, no, on our end. But
okay.
I can tell you this much, our people are feeling the pressure din eh. Medyo na ano na rin sila. I've actually, Ma'am Boots pala, I've recently spoken to our doctors nga to see about getting psychiatrists to help our mental health programs din. Kasi nga, our people are feeling the pressure talaga eh. Diba? It has been hard for everyone eh. So yun po.
Just a final question. Madam Cora has a question for De La Paz, Bernardo. You are on mute. Cora, you're on mute. She's on mute.
Her end. Okay, sorry.
I think she's still trying.
Oh, Sir Fred. Let me say hi to Sir Fred ba. Sure, hi. He's our constant ally in ICD po, si Sir Fred. Good to see you. I didn't know you were here. Yes, sir.
Actually, just to let you know, there are quite a few of us who are also trustees of ICD. So we're here representing both organizations.
Both entities.
While Cora's figuring out her sound, I while you were presenting the mission and vision of SEC, obviously there is an alignment with what I see, rather SharePHIL seeks to achieve as well, as which is really to enable investors to make investments wisely and create wealth, etc. And in fact, our pillars are educate, empower, equip, and empower. That's actually the thrust of our programs. So, do you have any thoughts on how we could work together, given that there seems to be a convergence and alignment of what we wish to achieve?
Yeah, offhand, ma'am, we have multiple programs naman. If I recall, in one of your other entities, we're speaking to one of your other entities, Philippine Business Women's Coalition, diba? So I am very open nga to especially on the corporate governance side, since that's directly under me. I am very open to multiple what's the word for it? Alignments, discussions, things of the like. Now, so because I as someone who used to come from the private sector, I know for a fact that kami sa government, we don't know everything. And it is through private-public partnerships that the best collaborations come. I would be very happy to hear further if there's anything that ICD wants to further discuss with us. SharePHIL, or and yes. My next discussion was going to be SharePHIL or SharePHIL or even MAP ni Sir Francis. So like I said, government doesn't know anything. If there's one thing I've learned, no, government doesn't know everything. So I would be very happy to hear from the private sector, please.
Okay. Now that Cora is on, I'll give the last question to Cora in the interest of time. Cora, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if the commissioner would like to answer this question, but it has to do more with the medical city case and who should be running. Running the hospital.
Wait, cannot touch that. Ma'am, we issued a decision recently on it. We cannot touch. Ano po? Litis pendentia. No. My understanding, someone's gonna appeal it. So cannot touch.
So it's still, you can't comment on it. Okay.
No. We issued the decision, ma'am. So cannot.
Favor of whoever. Anyway, last question in the interest of time. Attorney Francis.
Commissioner, would the SEC be open to receiving proposals from the business sector? For example,
in relation to?
Because SharePHIL and other organizations may want to have some proposals, at least for the consideration of the SEC. For example, just an example lang, no? It's no secret that we have been lagging behind our Asian neighbors in terms of getting foreign investors, okay? Now, there are opinions of the Office of the General Counsel before your time. I have to emphasize before your time. No? It's not even opinions of the Commission and Bank, which basically says that digital platforms, even if located outside, is media, and therefore foreigners cannot invest even 1%. No? And there, for example, because of the pandemic, the telemedicine, no? They want to have a digital platform, but they don't have the money. But foreign investors are interested to help them out. But foreign investors are prohibited because of that opinion of the General Counsel long before your time. I really don't know if the SEC would want to revisit this, because in some cases, the platform is located outside the Philippines. Some walang employees dito, ganon. But because of that treatment by an opinion by the Office of the General Counsel, not even in bank opinion, I have to stress that. Parang we lawyers cannot advise the foreign investor to put in a single money, and that will, for us, in this time where digitization is really very important, no? I think there needs to be some flexibility, no, or easing of regulatory rules, no. I cannot believe it.
Sorry, sir. No, to touch on that point, I am actually, ako personally, I try to be flexible when it comes to some of these legal requirements. However, if it's a past OGC opinion, kasi I'm not so sure if we should override, considering that it's touching. Usually, mga OGC opinions kasi they're based on law naman kasi. No, I'll have to look into that, because if this is the media stuff, that's touchy. I think you would have to go to the negative list, or you'd have to go to Congress. I'm not even sure kung kami yung talagang proper venue for something like that. But we can revisit. We can take a look. But as to whether or not we can legally act on it, ako personally, I'm not so sure we can. The better venue might be Congress na, offhand, no? So when it comes to some of these things,
Because
yeah, sure. Why not?
There's no court ruling on the issue. It's just there's those opinions, all the opinions by the Office of the General Counsel. But anyway, we can take that up.
Well, sir, yun nga, sir. Feel free na lang to send the submission. I'll look at it kasi since we're talking very broadly pa, I might not be able to. I'm not even sure if I'm talking about the right thing. Yeah. So I'd be happy to see whatever your submission is na lang of your entity, and then let's take a look. Let's see na lang what we can do. No promises, considering that ako personally, I think it's not us. I personally don't think it's SEC in that situation. But let's see. Let's take a look at it. Why not? No problem.
Okay. I have to end this Q&A. Thank you, Kelvin, for being an
Thank you.
Thank you.
And please expect us to send you emails for whatever reason.
Yes. Sorry. Our email pala. I'm not sure if it was on the PowerPoint, no, but my office email is oclee@sec.gov.ph in case anyone needs it. I always say this at the end of every discussion. I can promise you that we can read it. I can't promise we'll reply kasi nga medyo there is a certain volume. Hindi namin mahabol. But I can promise you I will be able to read that email naman. So please feel free to send us emails, and then let's see what we can do. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Kelvin, appreciate it. Salamat.
Thank you.
Thank you.